afternoon and welcome to Adda with Kalyan. This is our first hangout today, and we've got a really exciting lineup for you on India Food Network. So we've got, today we've got three very interesting chefs who have moved well outside of the kitchens, and they've traveled all over India, across the world, and we've got some really exciting and tempting stories and delicious stories which you're going to hear from them. So today we have three chefs who are three of the slimmest chefs I've ever seen, and make up with some of the great stories which they have. So we have Thomas with us, Thomas Zacharias. He is the executive chef with Bombay Canteen, the restaurant which has really set Mumbai on fire with some really interesting stuff they're doing in Indian food. But that's not the end of his story, because he took a break in between his earlier job with Olive and this, where he traveled all across India at his own expenses, getting inspirations for his menu. And before that, he traveled all over Europe. So it's going to be really interesting to hear his story. Then we've got Saransh Goila with us, who started as a chef, and then he moved into this entirely new phenomena, a new breed of television chefs. So you will see him cooking across different screens in different events. And he traveled across India for 100 days. And he's just come up with a book on that, which he's launching tomorrow. It's called India on My Platter. Saransh, you want to show us the book and give us a big smile? So that's Saransh, and that's really fascinating, because 100 days on the trot across India, and I was reading that book, and it had me completely in its grips. Like, I'd go to bed reading it, wake up reading it, and like it's really riveting. And since this is about travel, we have one of our chefs who's traveling in Mumbai. He's caught in traffic. Not really the most exciting of stories right now, but we've got Ranveer Brar with us, Chef Ranveer. So Chef Ranveer has a very interesting stories. He was one of the earliest executive five-star chefs in India, who then went to the US and worked in restaurants over there, opened restaurants there. Came back to India, where he used to work with a five-star hotel, the Novotel, as an executive chef, and did a television series, The Great Indian Rasoi, which got him to travel all over India. And I have a feeling that that's where the television bug caught him, and he left, and he became the MasterChef India, one of the MasterChef India judges. And he also has a lot of exciting stories. So we're going to talk to three of them and have some really interesting stories today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with Ranveer, because he's on the road, so we're going to catch his attention first. And Ranveer, the thing is that when you did Great Indian Rasoi, you were also working in a five-star kitchen, and then you traveled all across India, and you met a lot of home chefs, you went to a lot of small restaurants, you met people who were cooking different cuisines. So what are the inspirations from them that you took back into your kitchen, into a five-star format, into a modern dining format?
Kalyan, I think what happens with when we work in fancy restaurants, very sanitized, good-looking kitchens, we forget the value of simplicity in food. Because we're used to having such expensive equipment around us and using so many ingredients. We use 5 kinds of garnishes for a dish. The Great Indian Rasoi travel just brought back the fact, for me, it just brought back the fact that food is about being able to do the simple things right. Wherever we traveled, the best of restaurants, which were either karigars or the best of home cooks, the trick was that they were doing simple things right. For me, that was a good awakening, going back to basics. Saying, in the end, food is as basic as the application of heat to an ingredient. It's as basic as, it's simply as basic as, that's how it started, right? 5,000 years ago, some fire, some food, and then somebody put a medium in the middle, which was a utensil, and then we started cooking, and nothing has changed since then. And food is as simple as that, and that appreciation came in post travels, post these food travels in India.
I think that's really interesting, Ranveer, because on the one hand, we tend to sort of overcomplicate things in commercial kitchens because we feel that that's what's going to attract customers inside. But it's really the traveling across the country which sort of told you that simplicity is the key, and that's really an interesting message. Now, Thomas, for you, I had a question which Sudeshna had put in on Facebook, and I thought that since you're the one chef who's still in a kitchen in this room, I think you'd be the right person to answer that. So what Sudeshna wanted to know was that you've traveled all across the country, and you've had a lot of interesting stories. So is there any one dish in the Bombay Canteen repertoire which has a story around it from your travels?
Definitely. In fact, there's quite a few. We have something called Kottu Roti, which is something I discovered traveling in a small town called Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, where it's a street side food. It's in these street stalls that they call nightclubs for some reason, and you basically end your night there, and you have it's paratha that's mixed with onions and eggs and chicken and all of that, and then piled on a plate. So we took inspiration from that idea and basically layered the dish and created multiple levels of texture and flavor. And yeah, so that's just one example, but there's multiple. Right now there's we're doing our version of a begun bhaja, which for our pakoda menu, because it's monsoons, and we're serving it like a like a doi begun kind of a dahi dip along with it.
So what you're saying is that I could be in the middle of Lower Parel, which is Maharashtrian heartland in Mumbai, which was once the mills of Maharashtra, which was all about hardcore Maharashtrian food, and suddenly you've got food from Kerala coming in, food from Bengal coming in, all thanks to your travels over there.
Exactly. So I think it's a great asset to be, or I'm lucky enough to be able to travel and take inspiration from all these places, because I think there's so much more to see, and this Indian cuisine is so vast and regional, and somebody needs to celebrate that and explore all of that. So
so I mean, I think all of us are doing that in our own little ways, like whether it's Saransh with his book, Ranveer through MasterChef India, to Bombay Canteen, at India Food Network. That's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to celebrate regional,
which is amazing.
Cuisine. So Saransh, I was reading a book and I was completely riveted, and you can shamelessly show your cover because you're going to, it's going to be out tomorrow, and you guys must sell this, must buy this.
Only 295 rupees.
Only 295 rupees, and with a discount if online. I mean, this online world.
Yeah, 25% off on Flipkart, if it makes sense.
If you know him.
Yeah. He'll cook butter chicken for you.
I still haven't tasted this Goila butter chicken.
Yeah.
The Goila.
I've seen him smoke it.
Nice.
Smoke the chicken. So so I was going through the book and I found it really interesting about the range of places you've. In fact, I was talking to my friend Rushina about it, and we were both saying that in a way it sort of makes us envy you, because we both know that in our comfort zones we probably wouldn't travel the way you have, but through your book we've traveled, and you've gone to places like you've gone to Nagpur, which is the center of India. You've been to Gangtok in the east. You've been to Pondicherry. You've been to Leh. You've been to Kargil.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've been to Kargil.
Yeah, I mean, even
that is fascinating.
Yeah, even Musharraf hasn't done that, but you've been to Kargil. So the point is that you've been through extreme parts of India, and as I was reading in your book, like each day you were tasting dishes which are pretty different.
Yeah.
So you also go abroad and you represent Indian food, like you did in Sweden and stuff like that. And I'm sure when you go abroad, then people often ask you, what is Indian food about?
Yeah.
Now, don't you feel a bit confused what Indian food is about?
I do. Very frankly speaking, because a lot of people still in today's day and age feel that Indian food is all Mughlai and what would be perceived as North Indian cuisine, especially when you travel outside. Their version of Indian food is rich, creamy, buttery, gravies and curries with bread, and that's where the buck stops for them. So it's very difficult to really break that norm and then also show our diversity, but our diversity is so much that it's difficult to also try and explain to people what our cuisine is. Like people from the east, they're like, oh, we are never even considered when we talk about Indian food.
Absolutely.
I have so many people who message me every day from northeast, and I get random Facebook messages saying that can we promote our cuisine through your portals and through your website or through your book, because nobody considers us to be a part of Indian food. So it's there's a lot that we are missing on for sure, and for me to say that Indian cuisine is this one thing would be totally
But
wrong.
Is there any commonality for Indian food? Like, is there something which ties it? Is there anything you feel? Because you've traveled extensively, like.
Okay, one thing that I saw across the country was probably rice.
Rice.
Or the closest to that was Maggi noodles.
Maggi noodles, yeah, that's touching a raw nerve for a lot of people.
I know.
But you know this thing which you said about the East, I remember like when I came to Mumbai and we wanted fish. So me and two Bengali friends went to Saiba and Bandra. And suddenly we were shocked when we saw people around. They were having fish with rotis. I mean, who has fish with rotis?
Yeah.
But apparently they do, and Indians do.
And Indians do.
But there are Indians who didn't know about it.
That's so true. In fact, you know, even when we think of Indian food, we can't let go of spices in our head, right?
Yeah.
So again, when you go to Northeast, they don't add powdered spices to their food. They don't. They really don't. They use either fresh chilies, fresh herbs, or fermented bamboo shoots or things like that. But you will never see them using dry spices like dhania powder or jeera powder or one of those spices. It's very different.
In fact, Geetika Saikia, who's one of the IFN chefs and does Assamese pop-ups, keeps saying that Assamese food is not about spices.
It's not.
Which makes it sound so much European almost, you know, in a way.
I agree. Because the flavors then are much more sorted. They are more defined, and it's not crowded. The dishes are very simple in nature. So, in fact, for a North Indian going from Delhi, he will take at least 2-3 meals to adapt to their cuisine. Nobody who's having it for the first time and who's exposed to spices would like it in the first go.
Yeah, great. So Ranveer, coming back to you, you know, when we travel, we meet a lot of interesting people, and it teaches us a lot about human beings. And then you moved into something which was all about human beings and emotions, which is MasterChef India. So was there any sort of learnings which you got from your interaction with people in your travels, which you got into the MasterChef India studio in terms of how you dealt with people and so on?
So Kalyan, I'll come to that. Before that, can I touch on the topic where you asked what is the commonality?
Of course, yeah.
So you know, I think first we need to understand that India, just because you put political boundaries, it doesn't define a culture.
Yeah.
Right. Food is driven by cultural boundaries more than political, and that's what's coming out now when we talk about. So we just don't talk about Maharashtrian food. There's nothing called Maharashtrian food just because somebody decided to create a boundary around a space and call it Maharashtra. There's Sauji, then there's you know, Malwani, then there's food is defined by culture and not by the state. Similarly, Indian food, trying to define it by a specific boundary that the food resides in is going to be, it's always going to be challenging. Now coming to the commonality. Now I believe, I strongly believe that the commonality across the country and across all cultures is the fact that we revere our food like nobody else. The ceremonies and the reverence attached to food, whether it is in Bengal or in Kashmir, down south in Kerala, I think that is something that you don't see across the world. How many, besides the turkey in Thanksgiving or a few other dishes, how many ceremonies would you actually associate with food?
Yeah, that's
or
interesting.
What, you know, so I think that is something that is that's very distinct.
Yeah.
That is very Indian. That connects all our food thread together.
Yeah, there's almost something spiritual.
That's my that reverence, that respect that you have for culture and food is very distinctly Indian.
In fact, Ranveer, that's something which even as children we've learned, right? To respect food.
Absolutely.
To treat it as God.
Absolutely.
And this is something we've seen across India.
Absolutely. I mean, Saransh should back me up on that.
Yeah.
That is something that that you see that in Northeast, the ceremonies around the rice. For example, just the rice beer in Assam.
Yeah.
Only the elder Bahu of the house would make the rice beer. You know, because there is a certain respect that is attached to creating a certain piece of food that's going to last for life. There's a certain, every time we are fermenting bamboo shoots, not everybody ferments bamboo shoots in the house. The eldest lady of the house would put the fish in the bamboo shoot to ferment. So there's a certain reverence and respect that is added to food across India. That's my common thread when I look at when I look at food.
So because I remember
Now,
when I was
coming back to
We just take.
Yeah,
Ranveer, go on.
Yeah.
So no, that was it. Now I just wanted to come on to the MasterChef, but Saransh has something to say.
Yeah. No, you go
Yeah,
ahead.
you go ahead.
That in terms of the experiences which came on to MasterChef India, like experiences
So,
from your travel.
So I think what happened. So I went into MasterChef India with with an understanding of what is the food that the country cooks, and in our travels, what we meet is either experts, because we have very limited time, right? So we meet either the experts or experts at home or experts in restaurants. When we are traveling for television, now we are either it's the karigars that we talk to, or some expert homemakers who made it big because they have these specific family recipes. Now, MasterChef India, it kind of brings you close to that commoner. It brings you close to that common cook. Because most of them, they weren't experts. They were common cooks wanting to make it big.
Chefs.
And there I realized that in fact what changes from that common to expert is merely either years of experience or or just the technicality. There's no difference in an Indian's passion for food, whether they are a commoner or whether they are a karigar. The only thing that makes the difference is the technical stuff, like, they've studied, they've been doing it for a while, and while a homemaker cooks 30 dishes, that karigar will probably only cook 3 every day. So he's an expert in that because he's been doing it for 20 years. And that's the only thing that changes. The expertise is the only thing that changes. The passion, the respect, the underlying sentiment for food is precisely, it's close to the same. So that's a very...
In fact, Ranveer, possibly sometimes the excitement around food might be more for the commoner, because the karigar is doing it day in and day out. So sometimes I feel that the commoner might bring in a certain excitement and openness to it, which is very refreshing. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think what happens is a commoner will be more passion driven. So you're coming from a fresh perspective. When if you've been doing it 18 years, your perspective's kind of frozen on what you do. So that definitely, and I realized that. I mean, there were 20-year-old kids who had YouTube channels who were doing things their way without any formal training, and they had 2 cents to give to my experience, because they were approaching it from a fresh perspective. So that is very true. Now another thing, Kalyan, that I realized was the fact that we have reached a stage, definitely in the Indian society, where people believe that food is going to give them an identity, that their food is going to give them a career, a life. It was not possible beyond a professional chef to think like that. Today, somebody who's a homemaker believes that she knows how to cook, and she believes that if she puts it up on YouTube, if she projects it well, food can give her that identity, that satisfaction that she's always been trying to find. So that, I felt, was another takeaway for me. That we've gotten to a stage where our society strongly believes that food is a giver.
Ranveer, and there's almost a pan-Indian movement happening in terms of interest in food. And I had a question for you, Thomas, that you had 2 traveling stints, and both were travel around food. So one was in Europe, where you went to Italy and Spain and France, was it? Yeah, Italy, Spain and France, and then Olive happened. And then you traveled all over India. And in both cases, you were seeing different lands through the lens of food. So now you would think that Europe and India would be very different, but when it comes to food, is there a connect between?
I think there's a lot of connects. I think primarily both cultures share that passion for food. Perhaps not the reverence that Ranveer was talking about, but this habit of community and eating together and sharing food, and all of that. And during both my travels, people freely welcomed me into their homes, showed me local recipes, took me to the local markets. So I think that want to share food was one of the commonalities.
It's something which really opens up.
And then also I think both cultures use a lot of local ingredients wherever they are, keep it seasonal, which we don't find in a lot of Indian restaurants.
But in homes it's more
in homes it's very pronounced.
So Sudeshna had an interesting question on Facebook, Saransh, and I thought you'd be the right person for it, where she was wondering whether when you were traveling and in India and being an Indian, did you come across any dish which challenged you and you felt that no, I think this is not something I'd like to try?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, Satish had that question.
Okay. There were a few actually. The EMU Pickle that was there in EMU Pickle in Hyderabad. I just didn't want to touch it. It just and I had never heard of people pickling emu in India. It just took me by surprise because he's like, oh, we're going to a pickle factory, and in my head I'm thinking, acha, aam ka achar hoga, ye hoga, ye hoga, and suddenly he's like, our speciality is emu pickle, and that was tough. Though I ended up tasting it, and it was yum, but yeah. So just to think of having emu pickle was tough. Then Assam was again very difficult overall as a cuisine to to digest. Especially the chicken that we cooked in a bamboo hollow. It had dried bamboo. It anyway had the bamboo hollow flavors because it was cooked inside that hollow. It was too much bamboo for me. I just couldn't take it. And they have it with plain rice which is not even salted. So the amount of salt they added to that food was really low. So that was another thing that was, a little out of my reach. And they do a lot of pork dishes. One of the pork dishes that they do was with that Naga chili.
Oh yeah, the Bhujulake.
Bhujulake, yeah. And I was a daredevil and I went ahead and tried it. It was really fierce. It's hot, but it's good for your stomach apparently.
You wrote about it in your book.
Yeah. But the amazing thing about the Bhujulake is that, like, unlike other chilies, which it stays on with you for like a good half an hour. This one, it's just that burst and then it just mellows down.
Yeah. And it's good for your system. It does not burn you inside.
Yeah, exactly.
So, very interesting.
So Ranveer, I had a question for you right now. That when you're on the road, you're almost trying out different dishes every day, and they're often from cuisines which are sort of alien to you. So when you're doing times like that, and when you're on the road, what's the sort of food that you really crave for? I mean, you're a Lucknow boy, so do you crave for kebabs? I mean, I'm generalizing, of course.
Do we have kebabs here?
No, I'm not. I think with me the way it works is I will eat whatever comes to me. When I'm traveling, when I'm not shooting, then I'd rather have a simple khichdi and keep my appetite. And so either I'm fasting when I'm not shooting, otherwise I'm going to bloat in no time, or I just have a simple khichdi when I'm traveling and not shooting. But other than that, I mean, it's just I just take it as it comes.
I have a question for you, Thomas, that a lot of people got this feel that Mumbai is all about European food, French food, Spanish food, Thai, Vietnamese, what else? Name countries, Morocco.
I know.
Morocco. So how has the response been to an Indian regional cuisine-based restaurant? Has it been tough to get people in?
No, I think we're doing fairly well in terms of getting the word out, and I think people are acknowledging the fact that we're celebrating India and celebrating the various regions that we have. These are comfort flavors for all of us, right? I might be from Kerala, but a begun bhaja is still a comfort flavor for me. So it's not been very difficult to get through to the
last question,
crowd. And we're just going to keep exploring on that, and it's just been the beginning. I think I'll need to travel again to get more inspiration, and again, traveling for food is always an amazing experience.
I must say, you're doing a brilliant job.
I mean, your travels are exciting for us. So at the end, Saransh, I'm going to ask you one question. And I'm going to say this again, since your book is releasing tomorrow, India on My Platter, and that's the book. Any advice which you have, and Ranveer, Thomas pitch in as well, any advice you have to people who like to eat and like to travel, like, you know, what's the sort of mindset they should have while traveling, and if they love food?
I believe that the real deal is on the streets. So you can't be uptight about which place are you eating at when you are traveling. Sometimes you might discover gems in the most unknown places. When you are hungry between travels and you have to grab chai and pakoda somewhere, that might land up becoming the best meal you've had on that journey. Okay. So you can't restrict yourself by telling yourself, okay, I have read about these places online and this is what I'm going to try.
You should be open.
You should be open to experimenting, open to going to new local shops, and most importantly, visit houses. Call anybody you know in that town or in that city. Nobody is better than a local person in that city, you know, dining at his house and him guiding you.
So talking of being open, Saransh, there's actually a question for you, possibly this from Sassy Fork on Twitter, where she wants to know that if there was one food city other than Mumbai where you could live, which one could it be and why?
This is my newly found favorite city, Surat.
Surat.
Yeah.
And what's the one dish we should eat in Surat?
Surti locha.
Yes.
Locha. What's locha? Locha normally means like something going wrong. No?
I know.
I think it's Surti Locho.
Locho. Sorry, I call it locha because that's a joke.
That's a Mumbai jargon. But what is locho?
So locho is basically like a dhokla, which is steamed, but it's made into a chaat form with bhujia, chutney, and it's got raw mango on it. And
that sounds so healthy and such a contrast of textures and all that.
I discovered the same thing. There's a place called Jani Farsan in Surat where
I think that's the same place I visited. It's popular for the locho.
It's amazing.
Ranveer, any words of advice for people who like to travel and eat?
You know, before that, I think, you know, Thomas, I got to compliment you because I think out of us, you're doing the best job in terms of expressing your travels in your menus. You know, we are expressing it on television shows, but the fact is when you can express your travel in a menu and you have people taste it and appreciate it, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think big applause for you and Chef Floyd.
Chef Floyd and the rest of the team at the Bombay Canteen.
I think
thank you.
This is for you.
Absolutely.
So any words of advice, Ranveer?
Yeah, sure. I think, Kalyan, in terms of whenever you're going out eating, try and study a little bit about the culture because it'll give you an insight into where that food's coming from and why is the food the way it is.
Yeah, I think
it's very important to correlate culture in food.
That's a great way of knowing a culture, and I mean that's what I've tried to do in Mumbai. That I mean I must confess, I don't know if it's politically safe, but I don't speak Maharashtrian that well. But I've tried my best to learn as much as I could about the food of Maharashtra and food of Mumbai. So last question, I mean the same question to you, Thomas, at the ending. Any words of advice for people who like to eat and like to travel as well?
I think just to add on to what Ranveer and Saransh have said, lose your inhibitions, be open, again connect with home cooks. They'll be able to tell you a lot about the cultural history or the heritage behind food. Visit local markets. There's such a bounty of like produce that you find, and each market I went to in the different cities I visited, I was blown away. There was ingredients I'd never before like seen or heard of, which is humbling to see because I mean there's so much more that India has to offer, right?
Absolutely. So that's great. So visit local markets, lose inhibitions like your panel did today by joining us on our first Hangout and supporting us and really sort of made it a really memorable chat. So thanks a lot, Ranveer, and drive safely. And of course, you have the back seat, and we'll tell the audience this: don't talk while driving. Thanks, Thomas, for taking out time in between service, and thanks, Saransh, and see you at the book launch tomorrow. And all the best for India on My Platter.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.